Manchester United are closing in on Carlos BALEBA. The transfer window has changed. Manchester United fans, is this finally the Manchester United transfer window we have been waiting for? Because something feels very different at Old Trafford. No endless superstar chase, no months of public negotiations, no embarrassing transfer saga dragging on through the entire summer. Instead, Manchester United appear to be moving quickly, quietly and decisively. And now Carlos BALEBA could be the latest example. The Brighton midfielder has suddenly emerged as a major Manchester United target, with reports that the Red Devils have submitted a package worth around £65 million. And while the deal is not finished yet, United are already making serious progress. But there is something even more interesting about this story. It is not just about Carlos BALEBA. It is about what his potential arrival tells us about how Manchester United have completely changed the way they are doing transfer business. Because if you remember the summer of 2022, the difference could not be more obvious. Back then, Manchester United spent almost the entire summer chasing Frenkie de Jong. This time, they are moving in silence, and that could be one of the biggest changes at Manchester United in years. Let's start with Carlos BALEBA. The Cameroon international has developed into one of Brighton's most exciting midfielders. He is powerful, he is aggressive, he is technically gifted, and perhaps most importantly for Manchester United, he has the physical ability to dominate the middle of the pitch. BALEBA can win the ball, he can carry it forward, he can break through pressure, and he has the energy required to operate in a high-intensity Premier League midfield. Those qualities are exactly what Manchester United need. The midfield has been one of the biggest talking points surrounding the club for some time. United have already made changes this summer, with Andre Santos arriving from Chelsea and Jor Tielemans joining after the club triggered his £35 million release clause. And now BALEBA could become the next major piece of the rebuild. What makes this particularly interesting is how quickly the situation has developed. Just days ago, the picture looked completely different. Reports suggested that BALEBA was no longer Manchester United's top priority. Names such as Sander Berge, Manu Cohn and Aurelien Tchouameni were being discussed as potential alternatives. So naturally, when news broke that Manchester United had made a major move for BALEBA, it caught plenty of people by surprise. And that surprise may actually be the point. Manchester United are no longer telling the entire world who they want months before they make their move. They are working behind the scenes, they are gathering information, they are monitoring the market, and then when the opportunity is right, they strike. That is a completely different approach from the one Manchester United became famous for, and there's perhaps no better example than Frenkie de Jong. Go back to the summer of 2022. Manchester United desperately needed a midfielder. Erik Ten Hag wanted Frenkie de Jong, and United made him their priority. The problem, almost everybody could see that the move was becoming increasingly difficult. Manchester United's interest was public, the negotiations were public, even senior club officials were spotted in Barcelona, and the saga just kept going. Week after week, month after month, Manchester United continued trying to convince de Jong to join, but the player's position did not fundamentally change. He did not want to move to Old Trafford, and eventually United had to abandon the chase. By that point, the transfer window had moved on, and United were under enormous pressure to strengthen their midfield. The result? They spent around £70 million on Casemiro, a player who was already 30 years old. And they gave him a huge 4-year contract. At the time, it felt like a desperate reaction. Manchester United had spent so long chasing one player that they ended up having to make a completely different decision at the last minute. That is exactly what the current Manchester United hierarchy appear determined to avoid. And perhaps the most symbolic part of this story is that Casemiro has now left the club. The era of making desperate decisions after months of transfer uncertainty appears to be coming to an end. Instead, United are trying something much more controlled. They are identifying players, they are doing their groundwork, and they are waiting for the right moment. That is why the Carlos BALEBA situation is so fascinating. Manchester United actually know this player very well. They have been monitoring him for a considerable period. Last summer, Brighton reportedly valued BALEBA at around £100 million following his breakthrough season. That price was simply too high. So United waited. They did not panic, they did not throw £100 million at Brighton just because they wanted a midfielder. They continued monitoring the situation. And now, 1 year later, the asking price has come down significantly. Manchester United have reportedly offered around £60 million up front, plus another £5 million in add-ons. That means a potential package worth £65 million. It is still not enough to get the deal over the line. There is still work to do. Brighton are under no obligation to sell cheaply, and negotiations could still become complicated, but the important thing is this: Manchester United are already at the table. They have made their move, and there's a growing expectation that BALEBA could eventually become a Manchester United player before the transfer deadline. If that happens, United will have secured a midfielder they have been monitoring for a long time, while paying significantly less than the figure Brighton were demanding last summer. And that could be the blueprint for the future, because Manchester United are not only rebuilding their squad, they are trying to rebuild their transfer strategy. Think about what that could mean for next summer. Take Lewis Hall, for example. Manchester United are believed to be interested in the Newcastle left-back, but a move this summer looks extremely difficult. Newcastle have already lost important players. They have their own squad problems to deal with, and convincing them to sell another key player would be extremely complicated. So instead of forcing the issue, United could wait. In 12 months, Hall will be 1 year closer to the end of his contract. His situation could become more favourable. His price could potentially become more manageable, and Manchester United could then make their move. That is exactly what they appear to have done with BALEBA. Identify the player, do the groundwork, understand the situation, wait for the right moment, then attack. It sounds simple, but for Manchester United, that level of patience has not always been easy to find, and that is why fans should be paying attention, because the biggest story here might not actually be Carlos BALEBA. It might be the fact that Manchester United are becoming much smarter in the transfer market. For years, the club was accused of allowing transfer targets to dominate the summer. The longer the saga continued, the more pressure built, and the more pressure built, the more United sometimes paid. This summer feels different. Andre Santos appeared quickly. Tielemans was completed after United triggered his release clause, and now BALEBA has suddenly become one of the biggest stories of the transfer window. There is no guarantee that every move will work. Football transfers are unpredictable. BALEBA could still remain at Brighton. United could still decide that the price is too high. Another club could potentially enter the race. So fans should not celebrate until the deal is actually completed, but the direction of travel is clear. Manchester United are being much more aggressive when the opportunity appears, while also being much more patient before that opportunity arrives. And if BALEBA does sign, the midfield rebuild could suddenly look very different. Imagine a Manchester United midfield with greater physicality, more energy, better ball progression and more defensive intensity. That is exactly what Michael Carrick needs if he wants to build a team capable of competing at the highest level. And this is where the BALEBA transfer becomes bigger than one individual player. It becomes about the identity of the team. Manchester United cannot simply collect famous names anymore. They need players who fit the football, players who can handle the Premier League, players who can improve the intensity of the team, and players who still have room to develop. Carlos BALEBA fits that profile. He is young, he is power, he has Premier League experience, and his best years are still ahead of him. That is very different from signing a player simply because of his reputation. And perhaps that is the biggest lesson Manchester United have learned. Galacticos signings might make headlines, but smart recruitment wins football matches. The Frenkie de Jong saga created headlines for months. The Casemiro deal created headlines when it happened. But Manchester United now appear to be focusing more on building a balanced squad than chasing one superstar. And that could be exactly what this club needs. So Manchester United fans, Carlos BALEBA is not a done deal yet. The £60 million plus £5 million offer is reportedly still below what Brighton want. There are still negotiations to complete, there are still details to resolve, but the fact that United have moved so quickly tells us something. This is no longer the Manchester United of 2022. This is a club trying to operate differently, quietly, strategically, and without allowing one transfer saga to consume the entire summer. If BALEBA arrives at Old Trafford before deadline day, it could be one of the clearest signs yet that Manchester United have finally learned from their past mistakes. And who knows, maybe next summer the club will do exactly the same thing with another target. No months of chasing, no public desperation, no last-minute panic, just patience, preparation, and the right moment to strike. So now I want to hear from you. Do you think Carlos BALEBA would be a good signing for Manchester United? Is he the midfielder United need, or should the club be spending that money on another position? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you are a Manchester United fan and you want all the latest transfer news, squad updates and breaking stories, make sure you subscribe to United Active and turn on notifications, because this Manchester United transfer window may be quiet, but it is becoming very, very interesting. And if Carlos BALEBA really does walk through the doors of Old Trafford, remember this summer, because it could mark the moment Manchester United finally stopped chasing transfers and started controlling them.